The voice came from behind, sharp and commanding, dripping with authority and arrogance. "Sir, you're in the wrong place. This area is reserved for distinguished guests and active duty command." The words sliced through the warm California air, spoken by a young lieutenant commander, whose uniform was so immaculate it could have been cut from glass. His name tag read Davies. The sun glinted off his dark aviator sunglasses, twin mirrors that reflected only his own pride. Before him stood an old man dressed in a plain gray suit, the fabric wrinkled with age and travel. In his trembling hands he held a folded card. His pale blue eyes lifted slowly to meet the officer's, calm and unhurried. "My invitation says Section A, Row 3, he said softly, his voice steady, carrying the faint rhythm of the South. Lieutenant Commander Davies let out a short, incredulous laugh. He gestured dismissively at the card. "Pops, with all due respect, there's got to be a mistake. This is VIP seating for the Buds' graduation. You'll want to head over to the family bleachers." He didn't wait for an answer. His attention was already scanning the crowd, making sure others could see him asserting control. Davies was the picture of ambition, quick to act, desperate to impress, always aware of how authority looked from the outside. The old man didn't move. His name was Samuel Carter. He had driven 12 hours from his quiet home in the Sierra Nevada foothills to watch his grandson Ethan achieve a dream born in boyhood. The Navy base, the ceremony, the rows of crisp uniforms, it was a world far removed from his own slow, pine-scented life. Yet something about it felt familiar, like a memory buried deep in the bones. "The boy sent this himself," Samuel said gently, holding up the invitation. "Said everything was arranged." "The boy probably got it wrong," Davies replied, his tone lined with impatience. "Look, the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. Move along or I'll have to get security involved." He took a deliberate step closer, trying to loom over the old man. To him, Samuel Carter was just an inconvenience, a relic from another time. The Navy he served was built on data, advanced training, and digital warfare. Men like this belonged to the past. A few rows back, Petty Officer Third Class Miller watched the exchange, unease twisting in his gut. He was assisting with event coordination, and he knew Davies by reputation. Fast-tracked, technically brilliant, and utterly without humility. They called him Hotshot Davies. Miller could see the quiet dignity in the old man's stance and felt a deep wrongness in how he was being treated. Every sailor was taught to honor those who came before. Yet here was an officer doing the opposite. Davies raised his voice, performing for the small audience that had gathered. "What's this? Bring your grandpa to work day? Sir, I'm giving you a direct order to vacate this restricted area." He reached out and placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder, intending to physically guide him away. But the instant his fingers touched the thin fabric of the old suit jacket, the air seemed to shift. Samuel didn't flinch, didn't move, but his stillness carried a weight that pressed back against Davies's aggression. His calm presence absorbed the younger man's anger like sand swallowing a wave. "I served," Samuel said quietly. It wasn't an excuse or an appeal, just a statement of fact. Davies scoffed, clinging to his confidence. "Yeah, I bet you did, Pops. Probably pushed papers in Pensacola back in the 70s. This is the team's, bit different." He began to push, trying to force Samuel toward the aisle. The jacket sleeve caught and slid up Samuel's forearm. Miller saw it, the faded lines of an old tattoo blurred by age and sun. Something about it tugged at his memory. That was enough. Miller stepped away from his post, his heart pounding. Reporting an officer was career suicide, especially one like Davies. But some things mattered more than protocol. His grandfather had been a Marine at Chosin, a man of quiet honor. He wouldn't have stood by either. Miller pulled out his phone and scrolled to a number given to him years ago by a retiring Master Chief. "Only use this if you see something that could break the Navy's soul," the old sailor had said. He pressed the call. "Reynolds," a deep, no-nonsense voice answered. "Captain Reynolds, sir. This is Petty Officer Miller at the Buds' graduation. Lieutenant Commander Davies is forcibly removing an elderly veteran from the VIP section." "The man has an invitation, sir, but he's being humiliated in front of everyone." A heavy silence followed. Then Reynolds spoke, his tone razor-sharp. "Describe the veteran." "Elderly, sir. Late 70s, maybe. Gray suit, blue eyes. Calm, very calm." "Is Davies touching him?" "Yes, sir." Trying to push him out. "Stay put," Reynolds said. "I'm on my way." The line went dead. In Section A, Davies had succeeded in shoving Samuel into the aisle. There, that wasn't so hard, he sneered. He motioned for 2 nearby security personnel. Escort this gentleman to the main gate. He's clearly lost. The younger guard hesitated. The older one, a seasoned master-at-arms, looked uncertain. Something about this didn't feel right. But before they could act, a blaring car horn cut through the chatter. A black sedan with command flags screeched to a halt on the access road, an area off-limits to vehicles. The door flew open. Out stepped Captain Frank Reynolds, commander of the Naval Special Warfare Center. The crowd froze. Every sailor snapped to attention. Davies stammered, "Captain!" "What an unexpected pleasure, sir." Reynolds ignored him. His hard eyes swept across the scene, the confused onlookers, the nervous security, and the old man standing with quiet dignity. When his gaze reached Samuel Carter, the steel in his expression softened. Respect, deep and genuine, replaced command hardness. Reynolds moved forward, each step cutting through the silence like a blade. He stopped precisely before Samuel and brought his hand sharply to his brow in the most perfect salute of his life. The sound of his palm meeting his temple echoed in the stunned air. "Mr. Carter," Reynolds said, voice thick with emotion. "It's an honor, sir. We had no idea you'd be here today." Samuel nodded faintly. "Frank, been a long time. Last I saw you, you were just a lieutenant." Davies's jaw hung open. The base commander, Captain Reynolds himself, was saluting this frail old man. Reynolds's eyes flicked to Davies's hand still near Samuel's arm. His face hardened again. "Lieutenant Commander Davies," he said in a voice that could freeze blood. "Explain to me, carefully, what you were doing," Davies stammered. "Sir, this man was in a restricted area." "I assumed—" "You assumed," Reynolds repeated, the words slicing like a knife. "You saw his age and assumed weakness. You saw plain clothes and assumed insignificance." He turned back to Samuel, his tone instantly gentle. "Sir, your sleeve, allow me." Reynolds pulled the jacket cuff back down, but not before everyone saw the tattoo. The design was faint but unmistakable, a coiled serpent wrapped around a trident piercing a skull. Beneath it, the mark U-734. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Reynolds stared, eyes wide. That symbol belonged to a unit that officially never existed. Only a handful of living men had ever even heard of it. His breath caught. "My God," he whispered. "The Reapers!" He turned to the assembled officers and guests, his voice booming across the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, you believe you're here to witness the graduation of the Navy's most elite warriors. And you are. But today you are also in the presence of the man who taught those warriors what it means to be one." He pointed to Samuel Carter. "This man is not simply a veteran. This is Samuel Ghost Carter. Before there were SEALs as you know them, before there was DevGru, there were men like him. Founding members of MACV-SOG, the black operations pioneers whose missions were so secret they were ordered destroyed. Carter served in Unit 734, the Reapers, a direct action team buried so deep in classified files they became legend." The audience stood motionless. Reynolds continued, voice rising with awe. "The Navy cross he carries inside that jacket is one of 3. The other 2 are still sealed under top clearance. This man invented techniques still used today. Halo jumps, covert infiltration, hand-to-hand tactics. He conducted missions so dangerous they were erased from history. The call sign Ghost wasn't a nickname, it was literal. Entire enemy companies feared a man they could never see." He faced Davies again, his tone quiet but lethal. "This man has bled more for this country than you've sweat. You placed your hand on him. You mocked him. You dared to call him Pops." Davies stood frozen, his confidence shattered. "You are relieved of command," Reynolds said. "Effective immediately. Report to my office at 1400. Consider your career in naval special warfare finished." From the rows of graduating sailors, Ethan Carter stood rigid, watching the scene with wide eyes. His grandfather, the man who taught him to fish, to fix engines, to live humbly, was not just a veteran. He was legend incarnate. As the silence hung heavy, Samuel did something that stunned them all. He placed a steady hand on Reynolds's arm. "Frank," he said softly, "the boy is young, full of pride and fire. That's what this place makes. Don't crush it, guide it. Let him learn." The captain hesitated, the rage draining from his features. Then he nodded. "As you wish, sir." He turned to Davies. "You've been granted mercy you don't deserve. Not by me, by him. You'll report to the Naval Archives in Washington. You'll read the full unredacted records of men like Carter. Write a report on each. Maybe then you'll understand that wearing this uniform is a privilege, not a right. Davies could only nod, pale and trembling, before hurrying away in silent disgrace. Reynolds personally escorted Samuel to the honored seat at the center of the front row. The ceremony resumed, but the air had changed. It was no longer just a celebration of new warriors. It had become a moment of remembrance for the giants who had come before. When Ethan's name was called, he stepped forward, received his trident, and met his grandfather's eyes. Between them passed a bond deeper than words, a shared understanding of what true service meant. Later, as the sun dipped low over the Pacific, Ethan walked beside Samuel through the cool, salt-tinged air. All those years, Ethan said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. All the stories I told about wanting to be like the heroes I read about, you never said. Samuel looked out toward the horizon, eyes distant. He rested a calloused hand on his grandson's shoulder, the same place Davies had touched, but with love and weight instead of arrogance. Because the work was all that mattered, he said. Not the medals, not the stories. The work and the men beside me. When it's over, you'll learn the quietest men in the room often have the loudest histories. They don't need to speak of it. They lived it. He gave a small smile. Remember that, son. Substance over style always. Ethan nodded, the lesson settling deep into his heart. He was no longer just a new SEAL. He was the grandson of the Ghost, and the heir to a legacy built not on glory, but on humility, courage, and quiet strength. Because the truest heroes are often the ones the world never hears about. And their stories, though unspoken, shape generations long after they're gone.